Alright, doing a mic check. Trying to verify that my audio is working. Okay, there it goes. Alright. Just bear with me, I do have a cough going on, but we're gonna get through this. So, let me check something. Alright, so this is a relatively new channel and concept. I just kind of want to re-highlight the purpose of it. So basically, as far as the predator catcher situation, there's a massive amount of deplatforming. So the idea behind this channel is to kind of create and unite a community of coders as I learn coding, to then build technological solutions to counter that. An example of that could be, eventually NVCAP is going to make a website, and maybe it could make, but generally it should just be an open source platform, and where technological solutions can be created. So I kind of have been going through a lot of things as far as material here. We just covered basically. So what we're kind of doing, we're kind of focusing on right now is HTML. So we've basically finished that unit. And that's kind of how I want to think of it. Is whenever there's a large section of information, I kind of want to, we already, went at the pace we need to learn it. But then I want to review it. I want to engage it. I want us to build on that together. Although I don't quite know where the engagement lies yet. So basically, what it is we finished these two modules. So we finished them. So there's one where it was the old responsive web design certification. They call it legacy for that reason. That is the old one, and we finished that as well. And there were 28 basically lessons, and then what we completed was the new one. Okay, guys. So, how essentially do you want to go about this is I want to make it so that we can review this material, kind of an engaging way. So from this point on, the channel is going to expand into Gilded. I'm going to try to make an Instagram. And I Gilded an Instagram. And in general, I just want to make it more engaging. So in general, once I kind of figure out kind of like the best time to do it in the day, like we'll do panels and we can discuss things, and maybe people can build their own code, compare it. But also, what we're going to be doing is learning GitHub. So what is GitHub? GitHub is basically how it's basically how all of the code that you create can be collaborated with anyone else working on it with no side effects or anything like that at all. So what I kind of mean by that is, I believe the exact term for it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's called a version control system. So it's basically like, imagine a version control system as, let's say 3 students are working on an essay or 5 students are working on an essay. And, that's fine. Multiple people at once can work on an essay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what if what happens is someone saves a version of it, right? And then, someone kind of goes on their own, kind of adds to the original essay, right? And then someone else person 3 adds to the original essay. And then basically what happens is, as you can imagine, you'll just get a bunch of versions. So I'm actually gonna try to show this graphically, because that explanation was terrible. I just want to explain this better. So I'm gonna try to highlight this concept. So I'm gonna try to use a black background, kind of like yellow. See if it works. Oh, it works. So let's let's think about this like this. Well, Skimula, just saying hi to people in chat. Yeah, it's not like it's not a matter of my throat being dry. I just genuinely have a cough. Just kind of responding to chat. But yeah, so did I load Paint up? Okay, so I have Microsoft Paint I'm working on right now. I gotta add that in. What am I doing not adding that in? Okay, there it is. So imagine this. We start with this essay, right? Or let's say we have actually no. Let's just let's say we have student 1. And I'm using a mouse to draw this, so sorry if it's a little rough. But let's say we have student 1, right? And then we have student 2. And the reason why I'm talking about this is to highlight a very important concept that we're going to be working with, because it's essential. It's literally essential to coding. You can't even work with someone without using this technology. Something like GitHub, or at least something like GitHub, some kind of version control system. So we have student 3. I'm basically going to explain the reason for a version control system. That's kind of the first thing I want to do. So student 4 said there's 5 students. I'm just drawing it. So now we have 5 students. Okay, so let's say student 1, like they all are assigned an essay. They all are assigned an essay, right? Every single one of them. But let's say student 1 steps up to the plate. He starts the essay. And then he basically creates version 1. Hit double X. So he creates version 1. And then student 2, being inspired by that, he emails it to him, right? He emails it to him. It works out. He downloads version 1 and then turns that into version 2. Well, actually, I'll do it this way. He turns it into version 2. This built off the original version. But then what? And then student 3 will see it, right? And let's say he's inspired by student 1 and student 2, working right on this. So they see them stepping up to the plate. Student 3 is inspired. He's not going to do anything wrong. He's going to work diligently on what he thinks he needs to do. But let's say that he kind of questions. Student 3 kind of questions, what am I really building off of? Am I starting from scratch? Did we start yet? So what if that happened? Then we would have basically, we would have student 3's own version, which would be different than version 1. Let's say that's not the case. Let's say he gets sent version 1, but not version 2. So what he's supposed to do is, in order to keep a continuous flow of progress, he's supposed to build off version... this student built off version 1. This student built off version 1. The student built off version 1 to get to version 2. But what if... So what's kind of supposed to happen is student 3 is supposed to build off version 2 to then get to a built version off of version 3. That's what's supposed to happen, and then it's supposed to be built off version 3, right? And then go to version 4, and then version 5, and then version 6, and then version 7. I think what I'm saying is simple. Why would you not do that? But let's just say student 3 makes a mistake, and he kind of basically he kind of builds off version 1 and kind of creates almost his own version of version 2. He builds off version 1 and not off version 2. What happens then? So then we have another version of 2 that's totally different. Right? And then let's say in this scenario, version 2 says, all right, I'm just going to continue working on it. Let's say he kind of builds off, he'll build off version 3 without thinking. And then now there's 2 versions. It's like there's all these kind of versions. And then he continues working on it, and then he basically works on his version of version 3. And if this is kind of seeming confusing and messed up, that's the purpose of a version control system. And then let's say this other student, I don't know, let's say he builds off of version 2. He doesn't know. He thinks that this is the most recent version. So he starts with version 2, and then he kind of builds off of that and kind of creates his own version 3. Let's call it 3B. So basically, the point of all this is that eventually what's going to end up happening in the end is everyone is just going to have different versions that are building off of each other, that it prevents progress. It prevents continuous progress. It's not like version 2 is being built off version 1. It's not like version 3 is being built off version 2. It's not like version 4 is going to be built off version 3. It's like you're going to have all these kind of versions, and it's going to mess everything up. Maybe you've seen this in real time. Maybe you've had a group project and then there's a lot of stress on, oh, what's the latest version of the essay? And then I'm going to build off of that. So that is the purpose of a version control system. So we're going to type here. Version control system. I'm going to check if it is called a version control system. I just want to make sure being accurate or something. One moment. Yeah, it's version control system. Some call it version control software. So, we kind of talked about this being an essay, but in this situation that we're in, we're not writing essays here, we're writing code. So it's the code version instead of essays. The code version of this is GitHub. So GitHub basically makes it so that this kind of problem does not happen. So GitHub stops this from happening. Because it's just very simple. You need a system to control the versions. Hence, version control system. So we're going to be learning about that. So I kind of just want to, just say that after this, we're going to kind of have a big step through on GitHub. We're going to go on Gilded. We're going to go on Instagram. And I'm going to try to build it into what will be more interactive as a coding community moving forward. But at the same time, and actually I wanted to talk about units too. So I already mentioned kind of what I mean by a unit. It kind of means, it's almost like a level, where this is like the HTML level. And this is kind of the new one that FreeCodeCamp built. This is the old one, Legacy Responsive Web Design Certification. We've already passed that level. Eventually, what I want to do is create a panel in which we are engaging on each concept. I'm going to try to go through everything. And if anyone's kind of confused, stuck, has trouble, we can kind of figure it out together. And that'll just make the most sense. But at the same time, I don't want to work around that to prevent progress. So basically what I'm saying is we're going to do all those things, but I'm actually going to continue on onto CSS is our next level. And we're just going to kind of continue on. We are eventually going to review it, but we're going to continue on. And these streams can happen pretty much at any time. But I just the way I kind of think of it is to have engagement where it should be, but at the same time, I don't want anything to hinder any kind of progress. So I can't really think of yet the best time to do those kind of panels. I guess that'll be something that'll be slowly figured out. But essentially, we're gonna continue progressing on these concepts independently. So we're gonna get into CSS next. We're actually gonna get into it in this stream. We're gonna learn about CSS, and when we're in the concept of CSS, And we're also going to do programming. We're going to kind of continue on to Java, some Java stuff. But we're going to actually get into Android development. And we're going to learn about Android Studio. We're going to learn about... we're going to kind of start out with Java, and then also learn about Kotlin. So that's kind of the focus right now. But right now, the kind of the smoothest thing that we can do is we're just going to kind of progress on CSS and see where that goes. I just looked something up, so... Alright, so... now, we are going to get into CSS. I think where we should start is the legacy course. Alright. So we have CSS. So basic CSS. So let's just read how they're defining it. CSS, or cascading style sheets, tell the browser how to display the text and other content that you write in HTML. With CSS, you can control the color, font, size, spacing, and many other aspects of HTML elements. Now that you've described the structure of your cat photo app, give it some style with CSS. So, essentially the best way I can think of how to describe CSS, and it might not be, I don't know how accurate it will be, but the best way I would think about it is it's almost like a language of attributes, because things like color, actually let me load up the notes that I have where I explain that. Okay, it's not there. But essentially, the way I would think about it is it's almost a language, a program. It's like a language almost dedicated to attributes. So, so we're just gonna begin. I think the more we progress, we're gonna learn about it. Let's just start with this example. Change the color of text. Now let's let the color of some of our text. We can do this by changing the style of your H2 element. The property that is responsible for the color of an element's text is a color style property. Here's how you would set your H2 element's text color to blue. I just want to make sure that this is actually blocking. Yeah, sorry about that. My Microsoft Paint was blocking the lesson. We can do this by changing the style of the H2 element. The property that is responsible for the color of an element's text is a color style property. Okay, here's how you would set your H2 element's text color to blue. So okay, I mean this almost just looks like an attribute in general. I mean this would be in place of an attribute. It just happens to be style, and then equals color blue. So what that'll make is a kind of a second degree header blue. Now that it is a good practice to end inline style declarations. Oh, note that it is a good practice to end inline style declarations with a semicolon. So I think the purpose of that is just to make it very clear for the computer to know what code is ending and when it's beginning. It's kind of like a sentence where you want to put a period at the end of a sentence, just for clarity. So change your H2 element style so that its text color is red. So okay, so how do we do that? I think they're referring to this H2 element. So we found the H2 element that they want us to change. And now we're going to build on this knowledge to change it to not blue, but red. Let's do it. Let's actually I don't want to do that. I want to write it in. So style equals color, right? Just want to make it bigger. Not blue, but red. So what's going to happen is this entire code is going to be checked if I made the correct modification. So if I change this code correctly, the test is going to let me know that I did that. So let's see. I just applied what they knew. I applied what they said. I added this. So let's see. So yeah, so we successfully finished that. The next lesson, use CSS selectors to style elements. So make sure everything's good. Use CSS selectors to style elements. With CSS, there are hundreds of CSS properties that you can use to change the way an element looks on your page. When you entered H2 style color is red for this, you're styling that individual H2 element with inline CSS, which stands for cascading style sheets. So what does it mean when it's saying inline? What do you think that means? Well, because it's literally in the line. It's in the line of the element. If it's ever in the line of an element, like it's an attribute, that makes it essentially inline CSS. There's one way to specify the style of an element, but there's a better way to apply CSS. At the top of your code, create a style block like this. Okay, so what's this going to do? Alright, I did that. So inside that style block, you can create a CSS selector for all H2 elements. So it's kind of like the question is, why are we even learning this? Because you can actually decide that not only do I want to make this H2 element red, but what if I want to make all of them, every single thing that is an H2 element, all of them red? You know, for consistency. Would you want to have to type in every single time to make the color red, the text color red, every single time? No. So this is a solution to that. So instead, for now, actually, I want to get rid of this to kind of show that it works. So style H2 element, and we're changing the color to red. Every single one. So not only does that apply to this one H2, every single one. I could just make another one. Cat Photo App 2. Cat Photo App 3. Where I don't need to type anything. Because every single time it knows that I want to make that style red, I can change it to blue. I can change it to green. I can change it to yellow. I can change it to whatever I want to make it. For now, I'm going to make it red. So let's just continue the lesson. Note that it's important to have both opening and closing curly braces. So I think they're referring to this. So this is kind of just, again, for organization's sake. This is the same reason why there's a semicolon to kind of end this statement. Note that it's important to have an opening curly brace around each element's style rules. You also need to make sure that your element style definition is between the opening and closing style tags. Finally, be sure to add a semicolon to the end of each of your element style rules. So we were already told that. Delete your H2 element style attribute. So actually I wanted to delete it just because for instructional purposes I want to show that it does work. But it kind of told us to do that. And instead create a CSS style block and add the necessary CSS to turn all H2 elements blue. So it's kind of throwing us for a loop. So it wants us to change it to blue. All the H2 elements to blue. So how do we do that? Blue. And that code should work. That code should work. And that code did work. I think it says most triumphant. Submit and go to next challenge. So that code worked. So now we're going to go on. Use a CSS class to style an element. So I guess there's all kinds of ways. You learned about inline CSS. You learned about block CSS, where you have a block like this. So classes are reusable styles that can be added to an HTML element. Here's an example, CSS class declaration. Alright, so this is another way to do that. So what are they saying here? You can see we've created a CSS class called blue text within the style tag. You can apply a class to an HTML element like this. H2 class blue text cat photo app. Note that in your CSS style element, class names start with a period. In your HTML element class attribute, the class names does not include the period. Okay. Inside your style element, change the H2 selector to .red text to update the color's value from blue to red. So then give your H2 element the class attribute with the value of red text. Okay. So this is how we do a class. So this is a class. This is what's in the class. And basically anything that uses the class will do this. So let's do that. So this is what it had before. Blue text. Color blue. And on its own, it doesn't mean anything because it has not been applied. So how do we apply a class? On any element you want to use it, you're going to say class equals, and you're going to lose the period. See this period? That just tells it that it is a class. But you don't put that in when you actually apply the class. So let's apply this class. See, there it goes. And keep it very clear. It doesn't matter what they're called. We can call this red class, and it doesn't change anything because, we changed the name of the class, but the code's the same. It doesn't matter what the class is called. Actually, it does matter because we have to make it consistent. So even though it says red text, because the class actually makes it blue, it's blue. So I think we were asked to make a blue text class. I think that was what we were actually asked to do. I mean, were we? Inside your style element, change the H2 selector to red text and update the color from blue to red. Okay, so we're creating red text. That's fine. So red, red, and red. I think that's it. So we're going to run the tests, and it should work. And it did. The town is now red. Submit and go to the next challenge. I'm going to do that eventually. Style multiple elements with a CSS class. Classes allow you to use the same CSS styles on multiple HTML elements. You can see this by applying your red text class to the first P element. So, how do we apply that class to the first P element? How do we do that? Same thing. So it can be anything. So now this first P element also is using that class. And this is kind of for the other way around, where what if it's not just you want to make all of the H2s a certain color? What if you have a very specific kind of style? It's like a haircut, a very specific style that you want to apply to only certain elements, but it's very specific. That's how you do that. So I think actually, I think we did it. We did what we were asked to do. I'm just gonna hit run the tests. Yep, we did it. We're actually 9% complete with that module. Change the font size of an element. Font size is controlled by the font size CSS property, like this. So what is this saying? All H2 elements are going to have a font size of 30. That's what it's saying. Inside the same style tag that contains your red text class, create an entry for P elements and set the font size to 16 pixels. So inside the same style tag that contains the red text class, create an entry for p elements and set the font size. I kind of want to make sure it's... Does it want us to create a separate class, or does it want that to be a part of the class? I'm actually not sure about that. Okay, so between the style tags, give the p elements font size. So I guess I think it's outside of the class. I'm going to go on a limb and say it's outside of the class, so that all p elements are going to have a font size of what? 16? Did we do that correctly? Alright, we did. Maybe I can explain a little bit. So essentially, if we're asked to basically create the same style for all of, in this case it's a p element, but it could be any element. It could be, oh, I want to make all h3s a certain color. I want to make all h2s a certain color. It's going to be something like you would just put the element, and then within these braces here, you would make the rules. Where in this case, you're inserting kind of a very specific style and kind of injecting that in each element. So that's why I passed. So we're going to continue. Set the font family of an element. You can set which font an element should use by using the font family property. So I think the font family means just a type of font. I think that's all it means. For example, if you wanted to set your H2 elements font to sans serif, you would use the following CSS. So this is basically just a type of font. This is changing your font. That's all it is. So if you want to make, in this case, all HTML, all H2 elements have this font, that's what you would do. We can even do that. H2 font family. Oh, I think I was pronouncing it wrong. Sans serif is how it's pronounced. And then we're putting a semicolon. Okay, so that's literally what it has in the example. But what does it want us to do? Make all of your P elements. Okay, so already I know that's going to look something like this. Use the monospace font. So how do we do that? Just change this to monospace. And that should work. That should be what we were instructed to do. Yep, so we actually got this completed, but I kind of want to make a point, is that this is redundant. Why would you need one style separate for each paragraph? What you can also do, let's say you don't want that, what you can also do to simplify this is to do this. Now, you've accomplished the same thing with the same code. So this was exactly, I don't know if it's going to pass me because it didn't tell me to do this, But let's see what happens actually. But this is, if anything, I just got rid of redundant code. But it does the same thing. Yep, so it passed me. Because I got the same result. Okay. But yeah, so whenever you see things that are redundant, or notice are redundant, try to simplify them. But yeah, so we will move on. So, import a Google font. In addition to specifying common fonts that are found on most operating systems, we can also specify non-standard, custom web fonts for use on our website. There are many sources for web fonts on the internet. For this example, we will focus on the Google Fonts library. The Google Fonts library. So, we're not really sure what that is. Google Fonts is a free library of web fonts that you can use in your CSS by referencing the font's URL. Okay, so let's go ahead and import and apply a Google font. Note that if Google is blocked in your country, you will need to skip this challenge. So I'm not sure what country we're kind of talking about that Google's blocked, but I don't know how you could, yeah. So I don't think most people are going to have that scenario. But to import a Google font, you can copy the font's URL from the Google Fonts library and then paste it in your HTML. For this challenge, we'll import the Lobster font. To do this, copy the following code snippet and paste it into the top of your code editor. Okay. So, copying this, just doing what it tells me, and just putting it to the top of the code editor. Now you can use the Lobster font in your CSS by using Lobster as a family name, as in the following example. So let's see. Generic name is optional and is fallback font in case the other specified font is not available. This is covered in the next challenge. Family names are case sensitive and need to be wrapped in quotes. If there is a space in the name, for example, you need to use quotes to use the Open Sans font, but not to use Lobster font. So, I think how this works is one, where did it want it to be applied to? H2. Import the Lobster to your webpage. Use the element selector to set Lobster font family to your H2 elements. So all H2 elements? Is it all H2 elements? Because if it's all H2 elements, then it would look like this. So I think we change the name here to Lobster. And this can be whatever, apparently, because I said it's optional. It does appear that we have just changed the font. Is that what we were asked to do? So let's check. Did we do this? Yes, we did. Alright. So, basically, it's like we have a lot of fonts to work with, but if you want an even better one, you can basically import a library in this way, I guess you would have these links, and how it's relative to it is it's a style sheet, and this is a CSS document. That's what this means. So this basically imports the library, and this applies the library. That's what this is. And this can be whatever. I mean, this is optional. It says that generic name is optional and is a fallback font in case the other font is not specified. So I guess they're gonna cover this in the next lesson. Yeah, I'm just checking something. A moment. Alright, so we're going to then move on. So submit and go to the next lesson. So let's just see how far we went so far. So we're starting here. We're starting in CSS. So it has 44 challenges in this module, and we've completed 7 of them. So I think we should just continue on. But we're not going to do too much because, I don't want to throw too much information. But I think the cutoff point will be at about 20 for today. Or I don't know. We might finish it. We could just finish it. But I think I should kind of, we'll just see what happens. So the next one is specify how fonts should degrade. So what do you think it means by degrade? Because when we had that code, right, we could have some cool font that we imported, right? But then if that doesn't work, what do you want it to fall back on? So basically it says that it'll use Helvetica if it can, but if it does not work, use sans serif. That's what it means. So we're just going to read the lesson. There are several default fonts that are available in all browsers. These generic font families include monospace, serif, and sans serif. When one font isn't available, you can tell the browser to degrade to another font. So when it says degrade, it kind of means fall back, like kind of like a backup plan. For example, if you wanted an element to use a Helvetica font but degrade to the sans serif font when Helvetica isn't available, you'll specify it as follows. So that's basically what I just said. Generic font names are not necessarily case sensitive. Also, they do not need quotes because they're CSS keywords. So it doesn't necessarily need if you see like, oh, this is a capital H, basically they're saying it doesn't necessarily matter in this in this situation. To begin, apply the monospace font to the H2 element so that it now has 2 fonts, Lobster and monospace. In the last challenge, you imported the Lobster font using the link tag. Now comment out that import of the Lobster font using the HTML comments that you learned before. From Google Fonts so that it isn't available anymore. Notice how your H2 elements degrades from monospace font. Okay, so I see what it's saying. It's basically saying, pretend this doesn't exist, what are you going to do? If this doesn't exist, this is lobster text, what are you really going to do? So, learned about comments. So when it says comment out, it basically, essentially what, just reiterating what that is, when it says comment out, it basically means that all of this code will be meaningless. Like, we could make documentation here, and literally what it is when you're coding it, it's like a note for the programmer. So maybe you would want to note that the the programmer, or the name, I'll just say my name. So this entire code will not work. It will not affect anything. Whereas if you didn't, it would be a disaster. It would actually show up in the result. So again, all commenting is documentation for the programmer to understand. So if we comment out this, it will no longer run. It will no longer be used. So, it wants it to degrade to monospace. So that means it just did that. So, before, see that change right there? In cat photo app. Notice this change. Look at this. Before, it just goes to the default. After, now you're telling it what to do if this doesn't work. And this isn't going to work because I just commented this out. So, that's what it means. That should have been the assignment. That should have been what we were supposed to do. I'm actually going to click run the tests. And we are done. Submit and go to the next challenge. Size of your images. CSS has a property called width that controls an element's width. Just like with fonts, we'll use px pixels to specify the image's width. For example, if we wanted to create a CSS class called larger image that gave HTML elements a width of 500 pixels, we'd use this. So basically, it's like where we would have an image element, it would basically just be injecting this code into that element if you apply this class that you created. So, for example, if we wanted to create a CSS class called larger image, alright, so create a class called smaller image. So how do we create a class? Dot, name of the class, smaller, image. And it wants the width to be 100 pixels. we'll see if it worked. Oh, real image element should have a class. So we got to apply the class. So where's the image? We're looking for this image. So here's the image. We just found it. Smaller image. Now, that image is smaller. Why is it smaller? Because we applied that rule. So if we made it, say 500, then boom, we made it huge. 400, 300, 200, 100, that was the assignment. %20 in. It passed. CSS borders have properties like style, color, and width. For example, if we wanted to create a red 5-pixel border around an HTML element, we could use this class. So here's the style elements. Thin red border. So this is like a very specific style. It's kind of like in the haircut analogy. It's like a very specific style. So this makes the border color red, the width of it 5 pixels, and the style of it solid. Very specific. This is an example of a thin red border. So now it wants me to create a class called thick green border. So how do we even begin to do that? Let's start by naming the class thick green border. This class should add a 10 pixel, so we already now know the width. So the border width is 10 px. It's saying it's a solid, so border style solid. And the last one, it wants it to be green, so we make it border color, and we make it green. So create a class called thick green border. This class should add a 10px green border around any HTML element. Apply that class to your cat photo. So let's do it. So let's apply this class. So the class is here. This is something, if they didn't explain yet, I'm going to show you. Oh, actually, I don't think that worked as intended. Oh, so it's not separated by commas. Okay. So what I was trying to do is apply more than one class at once. And I kind of, some reason, intuitively thought that would be a comma, but it's actually just a space. So it's just a space. So in this situation, we're applying two classes. One, the smaller image class, which is going to make the width 100, and the thick green border class, which is going to apply this code to this. And we can comment this out. Oh, actually, I think with CSS, it's another kind of comment. Yep, that's how you comment with CSS. So notice that the commenting, they kind of, as explained, when you put certain indicators around certain blocks of code, it then becomes totally unusable, and it becomes basically just a note. For HTML, it would be this. It's kind of weird, exclamation mark, dash dash, and then closed by dash dash. And that would basically comment this out. If it was HTML code. But if it's CSS code, it basically does, the scheme for that is slash star and star slash. So we'll learn that, but just kind of commenting it out. If you notice, if I get rid of that class, you can't apply it, and you go back to that. But if we put it back in, we see the difference, and that's what it means. Oh, a Rumble 3R. So we're just going to continue on. I think we did what we were asked to do. So now we're 23% done. Add rounded corners with border radius. I actually want to see how far we're going. So 10. I think we actually are gonna stop at 20. It's gonna be 20 out of 44. Actually, I kind of want to chance at more engagement, so I think I'll probably do this at another time. So, not sure how long we've been streaming for. So we'll actually pause now. I just kind of want to introduce CSS. We're going to get more into it. And that's it. We're just going to kind of build on.